So the second case is Telkom. Telkom's partial privatization, there's an article written by Hodge, one of our colleagues at SEBS. Telkom's partial privatization was initiated because the fiscus, government, could not sustain the infrastructure investments that was required to expand tele-density in South Africa. Remember that this majority of South Africans were excluded from the economy and from infrastructure, such as telecoms. So, Telkom is a parastatal, it's supposed to roll out. And then government says, hey, we don't have money to fulfill these obligations. So, let's get a partner who can come in, inject some capital, and modernize the technology in Telkom so that we can connect the country in terms of telecommunications. Now, consequently, the pragmatic compromise was to sell 30% of the stake to private shareholders. So government sold 30% of its stake of Telkom to private shareholders. And these shareholders were a combination of investors from the US and from Malaysia. And together, they called themselves Tintana. So it's a South African term. You'll think that it's black South Africans. Tintana, meaning connect or interact. However, it was the Americans and the Malaysians. So in the process, the government granted a 5-year exclusivity period within which this Tintana group was required to roll out infrastructure to meet social objectives. So government said, okay, we're giving you 30% stake. But over the period of 5 years, we expect you to meet these social development objectives, universal access to telecoms, for example. So Hodge continues to say that the license conditions, including rolling out 2.81 million new lines, okay? New lines over the exclusivity period, which was 5 years. So this thing happened in 2007, which means that by 2002, we expected 2.8 million new lines to be connected by Telkom, of which 2/3 would be in underserviced areas, like rural areas, townships, low-income neighborhoods, and for priority customers. It was expected, for example, that South Africa will have a tele-density of 20 phones per 100 people. Okay, tele-density meaning that the number of landlines per 100 people, it was going to be 20. Okay, that was the target. However, what happened? Since 1999, 2 years after the privatization, tele-density has been steadily declining from 11 phones in 1999 to 7 per 100 people in 2002. So there's been a steady decline in tele-density. It's supposed to move from 11 to 20, move from 11 to 7. Many people say that, no, it's because of cell phones. So cell phones came in, so there was substitution. People, rather than connecting, so they were using cell phones. But I looked at international evidence. I looked at Latin America. I said, okay, South Africa's income and level of development can be comparable to some Latin American countries. What happened? Then I checked. In Latin America, actually, tele-density increased from 10. Right? We're almost the same as Latin America. It increased from 10 to 20 in 2003. I've got a figure here. South Africa's tele-density declined to about 5 in 2004. So, despite the penetration of cell phones, in Latin America, they managed to increase their tele-density, landlines. But in South Africa, it went down. Okay. Now, Hodge argues that the failure of Telkom to fulfill its universal service obligation was because Telkom actually hiked the prices and it clamped down on the people who could not afford. You know, these people who could not pay, postponed payments. Okay. So, and then there are other scholars who investigated this Telkom issue. And what did they find? They found that in 2001, there were almost 1 million. Let me read like the president. Almost 1 million. Almost 1 million landlines were disconnected 2001, almost 1 million were disconnected. Why? Because Telkom is profit maximization now. You clamp down on bad debts. People who can't pay, clamp down. And in 2002, a further 606,000 lines were disconnected. Today, if you go to any average South African household in the most advanced township in South Africa, which is Soweto, right? How many houses have got access to internet? You see, very, very few. Very, very few. Okay, this point is reinforced by Hurwitz and Curry, 2007. So there are other people who studied this thing. So this is what they argued. Who argued that during the exclusivity period, Telkom's prices for installation, rental, and calls, and sociologically inappropriate billing mechanisms in rural areas resulted in disconnection of the vast majority of the new lines. Thus, whereas access to telephone service in South Africa has improved considerably since 1996, gains in connectivity have been accomplished almost entirely due to market-led growth of prepaid mobile telephone, not the landline. Not the landline. And can you run a school with a cell phone connectivity? You need the landline access to the broadband. So that's what happened. So there is consensus that the manner in which Telkom operated since partial privatization has not contributed towards social and economic development. In fact, many scholars of the telecommunication sector argue that a major constraint to internet access in South Africa is the extremely high prices of the service. Further, these authors, Hurwitz and Curry, further observe that if in the mid-1990s, South Africa's internet connectivity was 14th in the world, a decade later it dropped to 37th. So what you have here is a situation in the mid-1990s, let's say 1995. Our internet connectivity was 14th in the world. We're number 14. And 2004, number 37. Universal access obligations of the Telkom by the new owners could not be met. Their study further notes that in 2003, South Africa ranked number 78 in terms of the ITU, International Telecommunications Union's Digital Access Index. So we ranked number 78, below Poland, Hungary, Czech Republic, Brazil, Mexico, Chile, and Malaysia. Okay, so that is the thing. When we are number 78, that was in 2003. I don't know now. Things could have changed, but I suspect could have been, it is worse. Okay. Now, what has happened? In 1997, now I'm getting into the deal, the privatization, because when the state privatizes, usually there's some underhanded activities that happened. In 1997, Tintana acquired 30% of Telkom's stake, as we mentioned before. And what amount of money did Tintana bring? It was $1.2 billion. So they bought the stake for $1.2 billion. And then they were supposed to modernize technology and to expand access to telecoms. And at that time, Telkom had 65,811 employees. That's the number of people employed by Telkom, 65,811. Okay, that is 1997. And they started rationalizing. Those places where they could not make profits, like in the rural areas, you just cut the service. In townships, low income, you don't offer good service. So you cut the service as well. So you cut costs, cost cutting. So you only focus on those fat parts of the country like Sentin, Parktown, you know, this strip, Centurion, and Pretoria. And you focus on Cape Town, Durban Central, etc. So you cut these other parts of the country. And as a result, they pushed also Telkom to list Johannesburg Stock Exchange. 2003, Telkom listed. And when Telkom listed, the stock price shot up. These private owners saw an opportunity. They said, okay, fine, if we can sell our shares and get out, we'll make money. And that's what they did. They put in 1.2 billion. And in 2004, Telkom's share price shot up. They got out with 2.12 billion. After 7 years, they made $1 billion return. And they left that parastatal without a modernized technology, with about 25,000 employees, having cut 65,000. Schools are not connected. Police stations are not connected. Clinics, the health system is not connected. They are gone. So Telkom is sitting now with government owning 39% of the stake. Now, I can go on and on about the Telkom story. It is very painful to continue. But, but that's the experience of privatization of Telkom that we had. Then what happened is that last year, the year before, 2012, there was an offer by the Koreans to buy a stake in Telkom. They promised the same thing. We will modernize technology. We will increase internet connectivity and telecoms access. And the government was thinking that they are going to, it's a good deal. They'll allow the Koreans to come in. And I happened somehow, I don't know, somehow, to be asked, what should we do? I said, no, you have to just sort out Telkom as a state. You cannot again sell a stake to the South Koreans, because by then, if they sold the stake, the state's shares would have declined less than 10%. So as a country, we would have lost control completely of telecoms, and our telecoms would be controlled by this foreign-owned company, KT, from South Korea. What does it mean? It means that the conversation of the president and his wives can be listened to by the president in South Korea. State security. It's a problem. Other countries have got limited foreign ownership of critical sectors in the South in their economies. India has recently relaxed, but still they've got limits on foreign ownership. The foreigners cannot own more than 49% of strategic industries in these countries like South Korea, India, even Vietnam. There are limitations. In the financial sector, it's even worse. The limitations are less than 30% in India.